My name is Ryan Schwank. I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution when I joined ICE on August 1st, 2021, as an Assistant Chief Counsel. I followed that oath for 4.5 years, working side by side with ICE officers. And I followed it when I resigned on February 13th, 2026, a little over a week ago, so that I could speak to you today. I am here because I am duty-bound to report the legally required training program at the ICE Academy is deficient, defective, and broken. 5 months ago, I was asked to teach the law to new cadets at the ICE Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, where ICE is training its new, inexperienced recruits. I volunteered, those without law enforcement training, I volunteered to take on this assignment based on my experience in law enforcement oversight, including at the state and local level prior to my work with ICE. On my first day, I received secretive orders to teach new cadets to violate the Constitution by entering homes without a judicial warrant. For the last 5 months, I watched ICE dismantle the training program, cutting 240 hours of vital classes from a 584-hour program. Classes that teach the Constitution, our legal system, firearms training, the use of force, lawful arrests, proper detention, and the limits of officers' authority. For example, they ceased all of the legal instructions regarding use of force. This means that cadets are not taught what it means to be objectively reasonable, the very standard which the law requires them to meet when deciding whether or not to use deadly force. Our jobs as instructors are to teach them so well that they can make split-second decisions about what they can and cannot do in life or death situations. Yet, in the name of churning out an endless stream of officers, DHS leadership has dismantled the academic and practical tests that we need to know if cadets can safely and lawfully perform their job. All to satisfy an administration demanding they train thousands of new officers before the end of the year.
Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Machar Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is the brother Yatazak Ba with the GMS Nebraska camp. And in this lesson, what I want to get into is based off this video that played at the beginning of this ICE whistleblower exposing the type of, well, really the lack of training and preparation that these ICE agents are being given before they're being deployed out into the field. And the way that they're being trained is deliberate because, as he was bringing out, these agents aren't being properly trained on how to follow the Constitution. They aren't being properly trained on how to handle certain situations, and I only played a portion of the full video, but as the video plays, he's saying, when it comes to certain life or death scenarios and certain split-second decisions, they aren't being trained on what they're supposed to do in certain cases. And so what we've been seeing is that these ICE agents are just, they're shooting people, they're, moving they're basically going against what they're supposed to be doing. But the thing is, that's how Esau wants them to be moving. He wants them to move with wrath. He wants them to move with violence, because we see that if what happened when these ICE agents, you had 2 cases where ICE agents shot a civilian, with the 2 people that were shot were Edomites, and in both cases, those ICE agents were let off scot-free. They didn't have to serve any time. They didn't have to go to court. They didn't have to deal with any consequences. So it's deliberate the way that they are moving. Because we have to understand, who is ICE primarily being sent out to go after? The nation of Israel, primarily the Northern Kingdom. Because at first this was a thing about so-called Mexicans, who were crossing the border. These so-called illegal immigrants who, let Trump tell it, are the worst of the worst. Violent criminals that need to be taken to concentration camps and that need to be, brought far away from America. But we see that in these ICE arrests, that most of the people who are being snatched up have no criminal record. Most of the people that are being snatched up have never done a violent crime. And so with that being said, we also have the fact that with how ICE is being trained, it wasn't said in that video, but they're being trained that if you see somebody that looks like they can be an illegal immigrant, which is basically saying if they look like a Mexican, if they look like a Haitian, if they look like a Puerto Rican, if they're speaking Spanish, if they're doing a certain job that people of that nationality do, then you can go after them. You don't have to ask any questions. You don't have to ask for any identification. You can just go ahead and snatch them up and take them away. And this is all to set up what? The prophecy of Jacob's trouble. And the thing is, we're already seeing, we're already in a certain stage of it where things are, are bad, but it's going to get a lot worse than it is right now. Let's go to Jeremiah 30:7, which says, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it." So it's a time like never before. As it says in the book of Daniel, it says, "It is even a time of Jacob's trouble." And Jacob is referring to the nation of Israel, primarily the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. There's going to come a time where we are targeted, where we are going through a heavy time of trouble like we've never been through ever on this earth. And these are beginning stages of it that are going to lead to a greater time of persecution, of targeting, because we have to understand that in due time, there's going to come a time where those of us who are in this truth are going to be targeted and painted as criminals. The same way that you have these illegal immigrants as being painted in a certain light and propped up as if they're a problem, as if they need to be taken away. Well, there's going to come a point where, those of the nation of Israel, especially those of us who hold this truth, where as a whole we are painted in a certain light and targeted and gone after. You're going to see, well, hey, you just had this recent situation where you had the dude who shot up, what did he shoot up, a bar or a nightclub, and he killed a few people. And what did he have on his shirt? Property of Allah. Now, of course, we don't associate ourselves with Allah. We don't associate ourselves with Islam, or, we're not Muslim. But the thing is, Esau is setting up a case against those with dark faces. He's setting up a case against those who hold certain religious viewpoints, quote unquote. That's why you had in the on the White House website where they are now labeling, they're changing, who can be labeled as a domestic terrorist or who can be labeled as Antifa. And when you look at what they consider Antifa or what they consider domestic terrorism, it goes down to the point to different beliefs a person can have, such as anti-Americanism, or having certain talking points toward the president, or, basically things that we teach in this truth, because we teach that America is going to fall. We teach that Yahushua is coming back soon, that this place is going to be destroyed. We condemn Esau's rulership. And the things that we teach is grounds for us to be labeled as domestic terrorists. And it's going to get to a point to where not only, are we going to just be, the same actions you see where these ICE agents are going after so-called illegal immigrants. Well, next is going to be that, as Trump said, they're going to go after homegrowns, American citizens. And that's why you seen in that video that they're being trained to go against the Constitution. Because in the Constitution, you ain't supposed to be going after U.S. citizens and snatching them up with no due process. That goes against posse comitatus. But that's eventually all that's about to go out the window. Once that Insurrection Act gets passed, anybody is grounds to be gone after with no due process, with no questions asked. You can be shot down on the street. And these ICE agents that do it, these National Guard troops that do it, these martial law troops, they ain't gonna have to answer for nothing they doing, because they gonna have power in that time. And that's why the scriptures say in 2nd Ezra chapter 16, it says, we're going to go to 2nd Ezra 16 and verse 70, where it says, "For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord." So what does the word insurrection mean? Let's look it up. We're just going to look it up on the internet. An insurrection is a violent uprising or revolt against a government or authority. So that's normally, an insurrection is against the government, but there's going to be an insurrection against those that fear the Lord, a great uprising, an attack, and there's going to come a point where you may have somebody, you may have some type of agents that's set up that's calling themselves Hebrew Israelites, black Hebrew Israelites, that's being set up to commit some type of crime, to do some type of violent act, where because of what they doing now, everybody that says that they're a Hebrew Israelite, everybody that calls upon Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is deemed evil. And that gives the government grounds to come after us. We can expect these things very soon. We're going to be painted as enemies, especially when that MOTB come. Look at what happened in 2020 when you had certain people that wasn't taking a jab, and if you didn't want to take it, people looked at you a certain type of way. People looked at you funny, as if you was the problem. Esau put out there that if you didn't take the jab, that you could get people who had the jab infected, which was basically trying to put the squeeze on people who was going against Esau's, who didn't want to take Esau's jab. He was making it out as if he was a villain. So the same thing gonna happen when this MOTB come out. Since we not taking it, since we gonna be, not bowing our knee to Esau's image, we gonna be painted as enemies. There's gonna be a great, like it says, a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. So let's read on. It says, "They shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord." So that's why these men are being trained the way that they are, to not worry about the Constitution. These people are just being given guns, gear, and power. And eventually, once in process of time, once that Insurrection Act gets passed, once we get to a certain stage in America, these people gonna be rolling down upon the men of the Lord, and that we gonna need Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai's protection. It's gonna be a great time of trouble, a great time of testing. And not only those of us who are in this truth, because it says a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord, but this is going to be upon the whole nation of Israel. Because primarily, who are those who have feared Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai in history? The nation of Israel. The heathen haven't sought the Most High. That's why the scriptures say, let's get this real fast. In Malachi 1:14, which says, "But cursed be the deceiver, which hath in his flock a male, and voweth and sacrificeth unto the Lord a corrupt thing. For I am a great king, said the Lord of hosts. And this is the point. It says, and my name is dreadful among the heathen. So these heathen ain't they ain't the ones that's been serving Yahweh Bashem Yahushai historically. We are the ones who have been serving the Most High. And you have in this time, of course, you have the 2/3 that's not seeking Yahweh and Yahushai, but we are the ones who are the children of the Most High. When we was in our right minds, we was the ones calling upon the Lord as a nation. So even those who ain't in this truth is who's being referred to in 2 Ezra 16, when it says that there's going to be a great insurrection upon them that fear the Lord. It's going to get even worse than it is right now, where you don't got to be an illegal immigrant to be targeted. As long as you an Israelite, that's grounds for Esau to roll down on you. We got to understand what the roots that this country has. People may hear that and think that that's crazy. But we got to understand that this country was rooted in Esau being violent against Jake. That's how this country was built. In North America and South America, even after slavery was so-called abolished, Jake being in the wrong areas, in the wrong cities, in the wrong towns was grounds for Esau to chase you down and lynch you or do some type of violent wickedness to you. Jake look at Esau the wrong way, and that was grounds for you to be murdered, and dragged through the street. The same thing today. You still got Jake being lynched and it not making the news. So this ain't far-fetched. So we're living in a place where we see on national television that you have government mandated. We got ICE going after Jake. So it's going to get even worse than it is right now. And that's and that's the word of the Most High. You got to believe that. And that's why if without Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai's protection, it's going to be great evils falling upon our people who just out here without the Lord on their side. Because let's read that again, 2 Ezra 16:71. It says, they should be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out of their houses. So we seen that happening right now. ICE breaking in people's doors, breaking up families. You got people disappearing, being taken to Alligator, Alcatraz, and these other, prisons and concentration camps. And, that's why it'd be hard for me to find an article right now. But there's an article that said that the government is basically buying out dozens of empty warehouses. And why you think they doing that? They doing that so that they could build more concentration camps, so they could build more places like Alligator, Alcatraz. And that's prepping for what? For Jacob's trouble. Esau about to come down with great wrath, man. But let's read on though, because even though these evils are coming, we have to understand that there is that at the end Esau is going to lose and the elect is going to win. Because when we read on in 2 Ezra 16 and verse 73, it says, then shall they be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as the gold in the fire. Who's going to be known as the Most High's chosen? How are they going to be known? Because the elect are going to be protected. Even though all these evils are going to be going on, the Lord is going to get the elect through. You have some that the Most High is going to give a spiritual power to, where it says what? Let's go to Isaiah 59:19, which says, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. So who's that enemy coming in like a flood? It's these troops. It's these men in the military, National Guard, whoever it may be, whatever, government agency, but that's going to be that enemy. And it says when they come in like a flood, the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. That's going to be these men of the Lord. When they're surrounded, when they're being chased down, the Lord is going to put power upon them that they may be able to fight back, And we're going to need the Lord on our side. We're going to need that spiritual power, because we have to, while it may be in some of our lot is that we may be in prison, is that we may be put to death, and there's a reward that comes with that. But some of the men of the Lord's lot is that they won't be taken. That they may get that spiritual power and be able to fight back against these men. You gotta think these is Edomites with hatred in their heart, with guns and numbers. But the Lord, with that spiritual power, nobody could touch him. Can touch a man of the Lord. What else? When we go back to Jeremiah 30:7, it says, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble." But at the end of that verse, it says, "But he shall be saved out of it." Who's going to be saved out of it? The elect. So it's going to get to a point to where it's going to be a great time of trouble, a great time of evil. But we have to keep in mind what the scriptures say, what the prophecy says. That's why it says in Isaiah 33:6, "Wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy time." Because knowing this truth, we know that in due time, there's going to be a deliverance. Even though it's going to be hard, even though we're going to be going through it, there's going to come a point to where we're going to be saved out of it. So, yeah, man, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Just wanted to get into that and just show, you have somebody that came from ICE himself, showing that it is a deliberate training practice that these Edomites, and these heathens getting, and even you got 2/3 of Jake who are in ICE. I've seen some Issacharites as ICE agents, as turning against their own kind, their own nation, and fighting for Esau, and they being given no training. They just been given power and guns and being sent out and saying, "Hey, go snatch these people up." They ain't being trained in the Constitution or nothing. So in process of time, it's going to get even worse. But hey, the Lord's going to be on the elect side. We got nothing to fear. That's why the scriptures say, let's go to. We're gonna grab a couple more precepts and then we'll close the lesson out. Sirach 4:28, which says, "Strive for the truth unto death, and the Lord shall fight for thee." So as long as we continue to call upon Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, as long as we continue to seek Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, no matter what is going on, the Lord's gonna fight for us. And it says even unto death. That we have to strive for the truth, and to strive is to fight. So we continue to strive. The Lord's going to be on our side. If we have to be put to death for his truth's sake, that's an honor unlike any other on this earth. And there's reward that comes with that. Death in these bodies, in this flesh, ain't the end. We'll be reborn with honor, with power, with riches, with rank in the kingdom. We're going to be blessed. And let's get one more. Let me see. Let me try to find it real fast. It's like it. Bear with me. I want to find this precept. This is all right. Let's go to Romans chapter 8, verse 31, which says, What shall we then say to these things? If the Most High be for us, who can be against us? So, the Lord has that mark of exemption placed on a number of people upon this earth, men, women, and children who are his elect. And if we have that mark of exemption, and we are a part of the Lord's elect, there's nothing that can touch us. There's nothing that can if the Most High be for us, who can be against us? How can Esau stop us? How can Esau take our blessing away? How can Esau keep us down if the Lord be for us? So we have to continue to walk in hope and faith. Until that salvation comes. So Lord willing, this lesson be edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS, and salutations to the elect. Shalom.